But moving forward, now that I have clarity on my purpose in this sport, I feel like I'm free from that now, and I'll just go in and compete hard. So I don't think it's a fire or anything like that that's missing. It's just kind of like grasping what my purpose is here and what I'm doing as a mixed martial artist. Um, is it what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this the will for my life at this moment? So having clarity on that now, I think I could just be free in there and do my thing.
Hello and welcome to the Who's Going to Stop Me podcast. Join us on an exciting journey to the depths of the human mind and soul of those who have been successful, of those who have been maybe where you want to go. I promise you one thing and one thing only by listening to this podcast, and that is a life that is more full, that is more exciting, and that will bring you more fulfillment. This episode features Rory MacDonald. Rory is the Bellator welterweight world champion. He's one of the best mixed martial art fighters in the world. It was such a pleasure to talk to him. We learnt about his journey from a frustrated youth to being one of the very best at what he does, one of the top Canadian athletes. We learnt about his struggles and his newfound faith and finding God and how that drives his actions and his purpose in his day-to-day life and also as a fighter. We talk about his potential future matchups. We talk about his recent fight that he had with Jon Fitch. We also talk about how he overcomes adversity and things like him being a father and also cryptocurrency as well and his passion outside of the cage. Speaking to Rory was really insightful. He's such a great guy and so honest. We can all learn something from that. So sit back, grab a coffee, get to where you're going and enjoy. Don't forget, if you do take something from this conversation, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rating. Thank you. So the first question I wanted to ask you is around, obviously, your most recent fight, your fight with Jon Fitch. First of all, congratulations. It was a really close fight. I thought you put on a great performance. I had you winning. And thought you deserved to remain the champion and move forward in the tournament. How are you feeling now after, I guess, the dust has settled a little bit? Are you healed up? Are you back to training? Kind of, how are you feeling, essentially?
I'm feeling good. I have a few bumps and bruises on my on my elbow, and I'm still healing from a little cut I had. But besides these little things, I'm feeling great and enjoying my last week of rest, and then I have to get right back into it because I have a fight June 14th against Neiman Gracie in New York City. So I'm just kind of, just forgetting everything at the moment and enjoying my little break.
That's a fast turnaround because I remember hearing the announcers say that it's going to be 6 weeks and they want you back, back in there. And yeah, that's quite a fast turnaround. How are you feeling kind of going into that?
Feeling great. I'm really happy. I mean, it's almost like it's perfect, as long as I'm healthy, which I am. It's a pleasure to stay busy in my job because you never know how long it's going to take to get the next one.
Just like talking more generally, how do you think, what do you think of your performance now you've had a few days to reflect on the fight? Because it was a really close fight.
Well, I thought I won the fight. I could have been a little more active off my back. I was a little too comfortable just thinking that I won the rounds. I should have just been a little more focused on actually finishing him off rather than just coasting once he had taken me down or wrestled me. But I still think I won the fight. But good lesson moving forward to remember.
Obviously, like Jon Fitch, he's been around. He's like a staple in MMA. Was there anything in that fight that surprised you? Or was it the kind of fight that you expected to have with him, like a very wrestling heavy fight?
Yeah, it was the same. It was the exact style I thought it was. I just I could have put a little more effort on my takedown defense than I did, and my jujitsu. I was just kind of being a little bit lazy in those scenarios, but it happens. And everything else though, my striking felt pretty good. I wasn't really that upset with that. It was just being a little more active off my back to make it a harder fight on him. Give him a little bit too much time to do his game.
Yeah, you definitely like had him rocked a couple times, which brings me on to, I guess, your post fight interview comment, which got people quite riled up. I was watching the fight live, and I heard your kind of post fight interview, and you said something that like a lot of people, like I'm sure maybe you don't read the MMA news or whatever, but a lot of people kind of looked into, like, really dissected those comments. And just for maybe the people that are listening that didn't hear what you said something along the lines of, it takes a certain spirit to put a man through pain. I don't know if I have the same drive to hurt people, and that kind of, I guess, sentiment. Now, again, like now it's been 10 days. How have you reacted to maybe seeing those headlines? What do you think of, now that you've had a few days to kind of look back on those statements?
Yeah, after some reflection, I have a lot more clarity on what I was feeling that night. It was a bit of a fight that I would consider like a bridge from an old career to my new career. So, in my past, I used to fight with, you know, a lot of inner anger and from frustration of my past, and would get satisfaction in some way of doing damage in my fights. So, as a new believer in Jesus Christ, God has really changed my heart and taken away the pain that I used to really feed off of for my competitions, and it would almost relieve the pain I would have in my heart for a brief period of time until I had until it went away and I had to do it again. But now my relationship with Christ, I have new life. I'm a new person, and all that stuff that happened in my past, it's kind of just been washed away because of the grace of God and how He works in people that give their life over to Him. So figuring out my career and how I was feeling about being a professional fighter and do, competing, it was mixed emotions because of this new identity I have and a new heart and things. There was a lot of like confusing feelings on how do I apply what I do. Do I still have a passion for this? Is this what I'm meant to do? But after some reflection, I realized that I do love this. I have a skill for it. God has blessed me with this huge opportunity to talk about the Lord to a huge group of people that may have never known about, who Jesus is and what He can do for you and what He's done. So I think that's a huge opportunity for me until the next door opens, because obviously this career doesn't last forever. But I do feel like I have a lot more clarity moving forward as my new career starts, so to speak. So during that fight, it was a bit confusing, but like I said, it was almost like a bridge from my old career to my new career and new focus moving forward.
I think that's a really, like, beautiful and nice way to put it, a bridge from your old career to your new career. When you say, I mean, on this podcast, we love to go deep with people and understand, I guess, a struggle and adversity, because we can all take inspiration from that, knowing someone that maybe had some troubles in their past or struggles in their past and they overcame them. And you mentioned, like, you had that kind of inner anger and that frustration. I guess where did that come from? Was that, I don't know, was that something from maybe your childhood or some experience, or where did that come from?
It was a bit of my childhood. I mean, I went through a bit of like a few years of like that kind of traumatized me as a youth, and I always held on to that in my heart, and you know what, it only as I kept focusing on it and feeding off of um, that turmoil, it only developed worse and worse, developed bad habits, just pushed me deeper into anger and problems, Um, so it was, it grew, it snowballed. The more I I wouldn't let it go and things like that. But thankfully for the grace of God, that you know I I I found the Lord and really applied my life to giving my life to Jesus and finding out what it means to be a Christian. Um, that really made all the difference and changed my life.
After watching the fight, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh no, Rory's retiring," like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
like he's still the champion, but he's going." And obviously, you have such a wide fan base. I think people were like, "This is so out of the blue." So I think people read into your comments a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I didn't really understand myself. I didn't know if that was the last time I would be fighting or not. Like, I was just very confused about how I was feeling. So I did need that time of reflection to kind of just get some clarity on what does this all mean? What am I feeling? Because it's really hard to dissect it when you're in the middle of a fight and there's thousands of people and there's just a lot going on. But a couple of days after, I felt very refreshed moving forward.
Yeah, and one thing that I've always noticed about you in all your interviews and post-fight interviews and other interviews is that you're very honest and you just give an honest representation. You're not like trying to play a game. You're not trying to like get a fight, or you're just honest. And I really appreciate that. And in in the cage as well, you're a very honest person in the way that you fight. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate watching that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I always just try to get my fighting to speak for me. I I don't I never did this career for personality or fame or anything. It's just something I had a passion for. It was martial arts and a competition, but so I never felt the need to go out of my way to be a character or anything like that.
And obviously your kind of newfound faith and your newfound spirituality is now something that's propelling you forward. As you said, when did you discover, I guess, your faith, and what does it mean to you now, moving forward?
So it was basically I grew up Catholic, but never really understood what it was to be a Christian or you know the significance of Jesus. I knew the stories, and I would go to church sometimes, uh, but it was I didn't have a relationship or any deep understanding of what it is. So I there was a disconnect, but eventually I met my wife, and she grew up Christian and has a family that's very devout, and um, basically they like she invited me to their church, so I started going, and the more and more I heard the preaching, um, it just would start making changes and making me more interested to know more, because from a younger age I kind of always felt like a hunger for that, but just there was no resources to hear it in my current place. I never really I never heard the word preached like that before, from someone who has the Holy Spirit in them and can and really deliver it and speak clearly, um, and it wasn't boring. Like I always felt bored in church as a kid with like the Catholic ceremonies and stuff. I could just uh, I couldn't get into it. So my when I started going to her church, I was like, wow, this is really powerful. This is real. So over time, hearing the word, starting to read the Bible, and just having more and more hunger for it, I started pushing deeper and deeper, and I was made the decision to be baptized and give my life to Christ in, I think it was August of 2017. And yeah, I've just been, on that journey ever since.
And how have you found that's affected you, like on a personal level? How do you, you feel more purposeful? Do you feel kind of happier, more relaxed? Do you find yourself appreciating different things in life, maybe your family more? Kind of how has that affected you?
Yeah, it's changed my outlook. It's also changed my heart, my thoughts, my perspective on everything. Um, so I do feel like a sense of peace. I have a lot of joy in my life, whereas before even though I had a lot going on from an outside perspective, and maybe some people would think I would be successful and happy, I had more anguish inside and turmoil inside than I ever had before. Um, and then, finding the Lord and being blessed with a family, and like I started to just let, like, those things of the past that were haunting me slowly started to be washed away as I pushed deeper into knowing and getting closer to God. And you know, I have a lot of, yeah, like I'm happy and I have hope. That's a big thing, is to be hopeful of your your future, of eternity, and this life now. Um, you know, it's it's just really nice to have understanding and good standing with God. Um, it's the most important thing in life, and I'm just feeling very grateful to be called, and the grace of God is just so good, and it really saved my life, um, for real. So it's been really nice.
You make some really great points there, and I think one point that like really stood out to me was that, and we'll hear this from other people that we interview as well, is that you said that even though you were at the height of maybe success, that in your life there was more anguish, there was more turmoil inside. So are you saying that at the times when you were like, really flying high and making headlines and making more money than you ever were making, that you were still had that kind of anxiety and confusion because you didn't have this spiritual purpose?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was fighting for the UFC world title, and I had lost it, but I'd been on a winning streak, and been very successful. The What I had kind of always set out for in the sport, to kind of be at the top of the UFC rankings, and yeah, I just had uh, a lot of problems going on in my head and in my heart, and just living a bad life with bad thoughts, and just always angry and always upset and never satisfied, and always blaming everything else on other people, and just just negative. Whereas maybe people from the outside were thinking, oh, he's successful, he's at the top, he's doing what he dreamed about. But in my own personal view of things, um, I was just I had some burdens that I was carrying. But once I started getting closer to God, understanding who God is, and giving my life over to Jesus, it changed everything. And um, yeah, God is just so good. Um, he made my life so much better.
Now you've kind of found this new career. You're backed by your faith, and your religion. How do you balance this? It's a bit of a balancing act between, I guess, because fighting is quite violent, right? If people look at it from externally and the act of being close to God, how are you kind of balancing those things?
Well, it's a sport. It's not like I'm going out and bashing someone over the head in the street. So, this is professional sport where we both agree and we're both competing. So I think using this sport to, be an example of a Christian, to speak openly about the goodness of God and who and what Jesus has done in my life, um, could be like a light for people in this industry that may never have heard the good news. So I think that's a big opportunity for me to you know to reach that audience, that maybe isn't being reached right now.
Definitely a huge platform for you. I mean, you have hundreds of thousands of millions of fans and supporters worldwide, so you obviously can share your thoughts and your views and your faith with them, and it's been a beautiful journey to watch, because even before this interview I was watching your fights and even interviews as well, and it's weird because now that I'm speaking to you and you're telling me this, I can almost see that anger in you. So it's really interesting for you to open up like that and kind of talk about your journey and transition in the sport. This might have changed, but you mentioned a fire or killer instinct in your post-fight interview. Are you doing anything in particular to kind of bring that killer instinct back, or would you say it never left?
When I was watching the fight, I noticed that I was going hard at times. It's just what I was feeling during when I was when I was taking my breaks to just think about what my emotions were, say when I was on my back, or I was just kind of coasting a little bit. That's what I was kind of reflecting on when I was talking that night. I was saying what, like, I was trying to make sense of why I was just kind of stuck thinking, and not just fighting like I used to. But I was doing my kickboxing really good. I was going for the knockouts, but then I would kind of pull back and kind of analyze my emotions, and that was just because of that internal struggle I was telling you earlier. But moving forward, now that I have clarity on my purpose in this sport, I feel like I'm free from that now, and I'll just go in and compete hard. So I don't think it's a fire or anything like that that's missing. It's just kind of like grasping what my purpose is here and what I'm doing as a mixed martial artist. Um, is it what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this the will for my life at this moment? So having clarity on that now, I think I could just be free in there and do my thing.
And just to switch gears a little bit, I think Firas was very critical of Jon Fitch in the lead up to the fight, because he'd been caught using PEDs in the past. What did you think of that? Did you have any kind of thoughts on that? Obviously, I feel like there's more and more people who are caught cheating now. The testing's getting better, but there's always people who are kind of using the latest technology to slip under the radar. Did you have any further thoughts on what he said, or do you just kind of leave that to the commission and the other people testing the fighters?
Oh, to be honest, I mean, I think it's really bad that people are doing it, and I think it's wrong, and it's a terrible thing that people constantly have to deal with dishonest people in our sport. I think it's a shame. And but the only thing is I can't control that. So I can't spend my energy blaming or pointing fingers when I first of all, I don't even know if he's still on it or not. So I can't bring up his past and shove it in his face. I could only focus on myself and just compete as hard as I can. And if he is doing it, that's on him and his conscience. Um, and he's also, if he gets caught, it's his career, and he's gonna suffer the consequences. But I mean, as far as me, I could only really focus on myself, and I just compete. I compete honestly, and you know and if the other person's, I just leave it to their own thing. If they feel like they need that, it's a shame. But hopefully one day, the youth coming up will will realize that it's wrong, first of all, and that they don't need that in their life.
I like that. I like your attitude. Obviously, you're not a cheater, but I really like that. Your attitude of like, I only focus on what I can control instead of worrying about what everyone else is doing. You're focused on yourself. And I think that's a really powerful mindset and headspace to be in. And I think that's why you've had so much success, is this idea of like, I'm focusing on what I'm doing. It's not about what they're doing or what they're doing. I'm just doing everything the best that I can do. So that's really cool. So next up is Neiman Gracie. It's very soon, New York. How do you feel about that matchup?
Well, I feel very good. I think he's a ground guy. He's a ground specialist, so I want to stay off the ground. I'm gonna do my best to fight a little harder in those wrestling positions and grappling positions if we ever get into it. But I do feel that I'll be getting the knockout in this fight, and I'll definitely be going for that.
Totally, completely gunning for you. Completely biased over here, but that'll definitely be a fun matchup to watch. I know fighters should never like look past their next matchup, but if you do get through that, fingers crossed for you. You'll be facing Lima or Michael Venom Page. Who do you think you're going to be facing if, fingers crossed, everything goes well? Who do you think you'll be facing in the final?
Well, I think if I were to bet on it, it would have to be Lima just for his overall skill set. But I mean, MVP is a dangerous guy. He's lightning fast, and he can shock you and turn the fight around with one shot. So um, you can't count him out. But if I were to balance it out for skill to skill, I would say Lima has a better chance of winning.
Hmm. And sort of, how do you? Obviously, you don't have to make any predictions about their fight, but how do you kind of see that one going down? Like, do you see it? Obviously, I don't think MVP is going to be taking him down, but is there any sort of like predictions or any areas of kind of strength or weakness that
Well, I
they'll
would
be focusing
assume
on?
I would assume Lima would try to slow his footwork down. Maybe try to take him down because I do believe he's stronger there, for sure. And if he doesn't finish him on the ground, um, I'm sure he's gonna find that opening to start his kickboxing up um, as the rounds go on, and he could probably do a lot of damage if Michael isn't on the move as much as he is when he's fresh. So could go that way. But to be honest, I'm really bad at analyzing fights. I'm probably the worst fight analyst ever. So it should be a good fight. I mean, I'll be watching.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing matchup because MVP is kind of very unpredictable. You never know what he's gonna do, and Lima is just like intense. Obviously you fought him before, so you know that better than I do. If I mean, hypothetically, like obviously it's a few matches away, but winning the tournament, $1 million, like that's a huge prize. Could you imagine, like, not to put any thoughts of retirement in your head, but could you imagine winning the tournament and sailing off into the sunset and being like, you know what, like finish my kind of career on a high? Or is that just like crazy talk from me?
No, I'm gonna keep going. I believe I still have more to do. I think, and years ahead of me. But it's definitely a nice prize. That's for sure. I'll be gunning for that.
And now, yeah, Bellator. Obviously, this is Bellator welterweight Grand Prix that you're in. You've been in Bellator for I think a couple years now. How do you feel? Like, is there any chance we'd ever see you back in the UFC? I'm not sure what your contract looks like, but is that ever something that could happen? Or kind of how do you feel about Bellator as well? That would be cool to know.
To be honest, I'm very comfortable with where I'm at with Bellator, so I don't see myself moving to UFC, but I'm open to whatever. I mean, you know, I'm this is my business, and I do it for the best contract possible, and that's what I my motivation is. But I don't foresee me changing promotions anytime soon. That's for sure.
You've got some really important fights coming up, and some big challenges coming up with this Grand Prix that you're in right now. Is there anyone out there that maybe you would like to fight, like ideal fights? You're like, oh, I'd love to fight this person. In the UFC, maybe anyone up and coming, or is there any ideal fights for you that you're like, oh, I'd really want to fight this person?
No, not really. I never really was one of those guys that focused on a certain individual. I just I take the fights that happen. I mean, all these guys that I compete against at this level are good. So I mean, I don't feel like a need to a certain person that I want to compete against, and just do just go against whoever is the next. Especially as a champion, you always get the best guys coming after you. So.
I really view you, and I've heard you say this as well, as like a martial artist, someone who appreciates the art of fighting, not just inside of like a cage or a ring. What's your origin story? Like when did you first start martial arts, and how did it begin? Because now we've got that like a little bit more context, because you said that things happened in your childhood and that you had that kind of anger inside of you. So I think it'd be really cool to understand when you started and what prompted you to even get into martial arts in the first place.
I grew up playing like a lot of sports. I was big into hockey, and I did soccer, golf, baseball, everything you can imagine. I was always into sports as a kid. Always kind of enjoyed the idea of martial arts, but never really had a huge opportunity to practice or learn it. I've seen some UFCs as a younger kid, and my brother had told me he had went on a school field trip to a UFC style gym. They practice that stuff. So I really wanted to go, and my dad took me, and I tried it out, and I fell in love at about 14 years old, and I basically just gave up everything else, and I quit hockey. I kind of fallen out of love for hockey at that age anyway. So I decided I wanted to quit everything, and I was at the gym every single day, and from opening to closing, and it was a really good place for me to take out everything that I was frustrated about in my life. Also, there was a lot of like positive people there that they were nice, and it was a good environment for me to be around at that time in my life, because things were not ideal at that age for me, and martial arts really helped me get through some hard times, and gave me something to focus on.
And for me personally, I always, no matter who, who's listening to this, I always recommend doing a martial art. Finding one that maybe you enjoy, whether that's like jiu-jitsu, Thai boxing, kickboxing, or whatever. It can be even a more traditional martial art like karate or taekwondo. I find that martial arts really teach you discipline, and they build a lot of confidence, especially when you're like going through something hard. What would you say are like the biggest lessons martial arts has taught you in your life?
I've done it since I was a kid. There's been a lot of experiences I've had, so it's really shaped me as an individual. I think the great thing about martial arts is it brings in all walks of life. So I've had the opportunity to experience so many different characters and people with different cultures and backgrounds, and been able to be friends with all kinds of people. So just being exposed to so many different walks of life because of the martial arts has been really helpful to, find a relationship and understand people. So that's been cool, just to be open about, all different types of people and upbringings and lifestyles and things. So that's been pretty cool.
And like one question that, like, from your career, the one thing that I see that really stands out is that, when you were 14, you you love martial arts and you quit hockey, right? And it was just like, from then on, it just seemed like it was UFC or Bellator, MMA, like that was what you were doing. How did you know? Like how, because, we, from my experience, people sometimes will be like, is this what I'm passionate about? Should I pursue this? There's a lot of confusion. So how did you know, like, okay, this is it for me? Fighting, mixed martial arts, this is for me.
Well, I think it had a lot to do with the environment that I was in and the position I was in my life. I felt like the people there and just, finding it like fun to learn these new moves and apply them, and that would be it's a physical outlet, plus it gave me like something positive to do in my life. It really helped me connect and have a passion for it. So it was just good timing and in my life, and I really enjoyed learning it. So it took priority over everything else going on in my life at the time.
And how, like, random question, how did your parents feel about that? You at 14 saying like, this is what I want to do, relatively young age, right? For someone to say, I want to be an MMA fighter. And,
well, I didn't really say I wanted to be an MMA fighter right away, but they seen that I wanted to compete and do tournaments. And, they were happy that I was doing martial arts and that it was a positive thing for me. But when I told them I wanted to start fighting, that's when everyone thought that maybe it's going a little too far now. But I believed in myself, and shortly after, obviously, when I started winning fights, everyone kind of realized that I had potential, and it was a good thing for me.
And that's kind of I think that's kind of interesting, right? Because obviously, I'm not a father. I know that you're a father, and you're expecting a boy. Am I right? You're expecting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So it's interesting because I guess at that age you were maybe like really raring to go. You loved like fighting and like you loved the martial arts, as you mentioned. You had all these positive people around you, but then your parents are like, "Oh my God, my son wants to be a fighter. Like this is crazy, right?" Especially back then when maybe MMA type was a little bit more, it was a little bit less popular. It wasn't really viewed as much as a sport. It was viewed more kind of as a spectacle. Now that you're coming the full circle, right? You're the father, you've got, a son coming into the world soon. How do you feel about that? Are you going to, take your son to the gym? Are you going to be like teaching him martial arts? I assume you're going to be teaching him martial arts, right? But like, how would you feel if he turned around at 16 and was like, you know what, I want to follow in my father's footsteps?
I'd rather not have my kids do it in like a competitive sense. I think it's cool for kids to do martial arts, but professional fighting, I would rather them not go down that road for a career. So I'll be doing my best to educate and steer my kids down a category that they could be passionate about, but also just different than what I'm doing.
Right, because I'm sure and this brings me on to another thing I wanted to ask you actually, is that the path to being a professional fighter is obviously an incredibly grueling one, because as much as and on this show we've interviewed people and heard their stories of incredible hardships, but when you've got that physical element in there of like physically being beaten up, that must add like so much pressure, because when you're feeling a little bit down or a little bit low, you're not only feeling down and low emotionally, but you're physically hurting, right? So I can't imagine how tough that must have been, like especially to reach the level that you're at, being a champion.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like some downer moments as a professional fighter, that you have to learn how to go through those deep valleys. But it's drive, and it's to be successful in any industry, you got to learn how to push down the barriers that hold you back, and there's that in every category of life. So it's just in this sector, it's just a bit unique about what you have to go through. It's very demanding, but that's what it takes.
And how would you say, because obviously you've had adversity to deal with in your career, how would you say that you've dealt with that in the past? Do you have any like kind of mindsets that you have, where maybe like after you've been through a tough fight or you've had a loss? Is there anything that you kind of say to yourself, or any mantras, or any, I know, great bits of advice that you've got for maybe someone who's listening and maybe they want to be a fighter or they're just going through a tough time?
I think it's just about getting back on the horse, just keeping it simple. You get knocked off, and you could either accept it or you know get back up and keep pushing. You know, and simple as that.
Short and sweet. I like it. I like it. So if anyone's listening and they're feeling a little bit down or whatever, just keep going, keep moving forward, keep pushing forward. I like that. And coming back to you being a father, what does it mean to be a father to you now? Obviously, you've got a little girl who's, I think, is she 2 or 3 now?
She's turning 3 now.
She's turning 3 now. So how has that impacted your life? And what does that feel like to be a father? I mean, changing nappies and these things. Like,
Yeah,
how does that feel to you?
it's great. I mean, it's so nice to be able to like wake up and have your day with your kid and wife, and it's a great lifestyle. Something I always wanted, and we're we have a lot of fun every day. Obviously, it's for anyone who doesn't have kids, it's a life changing thing. So your lifestyle completely flips on its head, um, and you're doing things that your priorities change. You have responsibilities, so your schedules change, and the things you're doing changes. So um, obviously you can't have the same lifestyle as a single guy. But to be honest, I love you know the responsibilities and the lifestyle that comes with being a family man. It's very rewarding, and it fills the day with a lot of happiness and a lot of things to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's like I've really enjoyed seeing you, like obviously watching your Instagram or your social media and seeing you grow and share pictures of your family, and like it's just been a beautiful journey to watch, so it's been really cool to see. Okay, so you're like really busy training, you're a father now, and you're going to church and connecting with your faith again, so I'm sure you don't have that much spare time. But I remember we first connected actually when I did some consulting for Bitcoin.com. So I used to, do you have any other passions? Are you still passionate about cryptocurrency? What are your other interests outside when you're like, I'm sick of fighting? What kind of stuff are you getting up to?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of crypto. Um, but just I'm a fan of just different investing and things. It's been something that's been on my mind a lot more. I'm actually right after this. I'm going to a meeting with a specialist on real estate investment trusts. So I'm going to go meet with him and talk about that. So things like that, obviously, and maybe looking down further down the line, starting businesses and things like that. So just been in the kind of the exploration and investigating period right now as far as getting involved in different things like businesses and investing. So that's been an interest outside of all my other stuff that I'm doing. And crypto is obviously I think it's gonna have a big future. It's it's very early on in my opinion still, and I think there's a lot of growth to go in that sector.
Mm-hmm. And you got involved in cryptocurrency pretty early on, right? It was 2015, was it, or
Um,
2014?
14. Yeah.
2014. So I think like the big wave happened in 2017 was when like the majority of people came in, late 2017, mid 2017. So you were well above the well ahead of the massive horde and influx of people. What was it about like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that kind of drew you in?
Bitcoin, when I first came in, it had recently hit a high of around $1,000, in that $1,000 range. So it was kind of like getting some ground, and people were talking about it. Um, I didn't buy it at the top then, but it's kind of that's the time period when I kind of discovered it. I found out from my coach Firas. Actually, I was trained. It was fight week of when I was fighting Tyrone Woodley in Vancouver, and we were just talking about things, and Bitcoin came up, and before you know it, I had opened up a wallet, and someone said like I think his brother sent me like a little bit of a little amount to kind of like show me how sending and receiving works, and just playing with it. And then obviously you look more into it and do some research, and before you know it, I started my account on an exchange, started buying, selling, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's a lot to learn, and I haven't even, I don't even know that much about it, but um, I think I have a pretty good grasp of what it is. And you know I think
Mm.
there's a lot of bad coins out there that people get caught up in, but I do believe one day there will be one cryptocurrency that will be kind of primary use of, if you know things keep developing the way they are.
And what's your kind of picks now? Like, what kind of cryptocurrencies? Obviously, it was Bitcoin in 2013, 2014. What cryptocurrencies are you looking at now as like the ones that you're like, okay, that really interests me, or this is one that I'm like invested in?
Yeah, so I got into Bitcoin Cash once they forked. I really didn't like the the way the Bitcoin handle was being treated. I didn't like that second layer of Lightning being added. Everything just seemed very confusing and like not easy to use. No matter what people are trying to convince me, like even today, people come up to me and tell me I'm silly for not having Bitcoin anymore because I sold it all.
I think that'd be pretty stupid to come up to you and say that, to be honest. But
Well, everyone has their outlooks, So, people at the gym, that consider themselves, Bitcoin masters or cryptocurrency masters. They think that it's only going to be Bitcoin and that's it. But to be honest, I don't think Bitcoin now is what Bitcoin was. I think it's an experiment that people are playing with, and they tried to alter it to make it fit I don't know, put their thumbprint on it or something, but it just doesn't seem viable from what I've looked into. It just looks like it's a mess. So I went to Bitcoin Cash, and then some drama started with Bitcoin Cash, where two different groups were disagreeing on scaling solutions and scaling ceilings and different developments. And I think just I don't know, just a lot of drama. I didn't really keep up with it too much, but I from what I seen, Bitcoin SV was staying kind of the path of just increasing the block size and going on with what the white paper had said. And the Bitcoin Cash group wanted to kind of make it a little bit slower, with increasing the block size. They didn't want to scale right now before, you know, they just want to take it a little bit slower. To be honest, I'm not super educated on, you know, what's going what are the effects of either one, but it seemed from my basic understanding that Bitcoin SV would hit, would get that scaling problem solved the fastest, the best way. So when the use case would come, the platform would be ready to do those major transactions. So still learning, but from where I stand, Bitcoin SV was my major investment and belief. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I was working for Bitcoin.com during the whole Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV fork. So I have really had the inside scoop, and I think it comes down. I think your summary is like pretty much spot on. I think it was a matter of Bitcoin SV. They wanted to do 128 megabyte blocks. Even like they were like 1 gig blocks. Like we're ready to go. Like Bitcoin works as is. Like we've got the technology, we've got the throughput in bandwidth. It's good to go. And then Bitcoin Cash, like ABC side, right? They were more like, we're not ready to go. We need to add like a few like little technical elements to increase efficiency. We've tested up to 32 megabytes, and then like the kind of the Bitcoin software, ABC software, starts crashing, so it's not ready to scale. So it all came down to that really, and then it just turned a little nasty.
Yeah,
So
it got really personal, it seemed like, and I don't know if there was lawsuits, and it just seemed very like a lot of arguments. So I mean, I couldn't keep up with all that stuff. I mean, I had a lot of other things going on in my life, but as far as just going from the technical standpoint, it seemed like, Craig and that team, they were putting in all the work. They were putting in good work, and I don't know, when I hear Craig talk about it, he has a very good understanding, and you know, it sounds like he has a lot of knowledge and a good team, and whether you like it or not, his patenting and things like that, it seems like it's a good idea. I mean, it seems wise to me to be able to do that. I mean, whether you think that's crypto friendly or not, I mean, it just seems like it's a wise thing to be doing.
yeah, definitely cool, because like the crypto community has a lot of like, there's a lot of crypto anarchists
Yeah, which
who are like, don't patent anything, like everything should be free, and it's like
that's
all
unfortunately
down
for
with the
them.
governments. Right?
Unfortunately for them,
Yeah,
that's not the reality we live in. So, I mean, if they want to live in a false reality and just live like that, it's going to be, I think, their downfall. It's not a wise way to go about things. And I think, yeah, I don't think that planning and that outlook on things will be very beneficial to their things. It's, we have governments and authorities to, that regulate things. So it's about going about things in the right way, um, that get things done properly in order. I don't know.
like I'm a real like you, I'm a real fan of like the cryptocurrency space. I follow the space pretty closely. Like I'm checking in every day or so just to kind of see what the developments are. And we've got Roger Veer, who I know that maybe you've been in touch with in the past. He's coming on the show. We're interviewing him on Friday, and we actually recently interviewed a guy called Andrew Craig. Andrew's a really interesting guy, and because I watched one of your other interviews and you mentioned you were interested in investing. Andrew Craig is like the best-selling author of a book called How to Own the World, which is really phenomenal investment advice for pretty much anyone who wants to build wealth over the long term. And his advice is like, invest in all the major asset classes, And he's someone that I could connect you with as well. If you wanted to chat with him, I'm sure I'd be happy to speak to you and connect with you. But he's really, really phenomenal guy, really smart guy. He's kind of worked with over, I think, 1,000 CEOs. He's written this best-selling book on Amazon. And his blueprint is how to own the world, which is investing in all asset classes across the world. So you'd invest in like equities, bonds, property, commodities, all over the world, because even, let's say, if the US goes into recession, then Asia and Hong Kong or China, it's going up, right? So his idea is having a balanced portfolio across the world that you invest in, and no matter if it's a recession, it's good times or bad times, it will still go up. And his investment advice has been, for me personally, looking at like kind of more traditional investments like, you know, stocks and equities and funds and these sorts of things are really, really insightful and brilliant. So I'll definitely connect you with him.
Cool. Thank you.
But I know we're running out of time here, so I really, really appreciate your time, Rory. Couple questions, or one last question, I guess, for you before we wrap up, and that's, what do you see as the Rory MacDonald legacy? Kind of, is there anything you want to be remembered as, or that you kind of want to like, okay, this is who I want to be?
Yeah, I want to be remembered as a person that stood up for the truth. You know, that I was bold with my you know, with my faith, even in where it's not exactly welcomed, and that I walked the walk and I talked the talk, you know, and I you know, and I stayed faithful through with that, so to speak. I don't know how to put it elegantly, I guess, but I think that's the most important thing, is to make God priority, and you know, that's a testimony in my career.
Yeah, I think I think that was very elegant, and I think I really like that, and I think it's a great note to end. And I do think you are a fighter who walks the walk. I think you've, you know, been very honest about your faith, and I'm excited to see what then this new career, as you described it, has in store for you. I wish you the best of luck. I'll be watching all your fights, and I'm gunning for you to win the tournament and go on to achieve everything you want to achieve. So thank you very much, Rory. For those people that I don't know who would be listening to this and they wouldn't know who you are, where can they follow you, find out about you? Where's the best place for them to kind of follow you?
Well, first of all, thanks for the interview. It was a pleasure, and you guys could follow me on Twitter at Rory_MacDonald, or Instagram Romac_Gorilla. So I'm on both of those social medias, so you can find me out there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rory.
All right, thanks, eh?
If you enjoyed this episode, please go over to iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify, subscribe to us. If you think we deserve a 5-star rating, then please leave us a rating. We also have exclusive show notes and bonus content over at whosgoingtostopme.com, so I highly recommend you check that out. For daily lessons and nuggets of advice, please head over to our Instagram at StopMePodcast. Until next time.